Good afternoon. It is the 7th of February 2021. This is Dr. Deepak Natarajan, Director Interventional Cardiology, the Heart Center, New Delhi. I am compelled today to quote Harold Pinter when he said in his Tapestry of Lies speech during the ceremony of him getting the Nobel Prize in 2005 for literature, "It never happened," he said. "Nothing ever happened. Even while it was happening, it was not happening. It did not matter. It was of no concern." Harold Pinter was talking about the numerous machinations done by the American foreign policy experts, by the CIA in particular, by the American External Ministry for decades. This ranged from Vietnam to Argentina to Nicaragua to Chile. And of course, now we know they have interfered in Iran, in Iraq, Syria, Libya, even in Greece. What we did not know was their interference in Indonesia. And this possibly factored in the slaughter of the 35th President, John F. Kennedy, in Dallas on the 22nd of November. Now, this has been brought about by a new book, which is entitled JFK versus Allen Dulles, Battleground Indonesia. Allen Dulles was the longest serving director of the CIA. The book has a foreword by Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone, if you remember, made that famous movie on the JFK assassination. And Oliver Stone concedes that when he made the film and when he did the research for his film, he had factored Cuba and Vietnam. He had no idea about Indonesia. And this is why this book is very important. I would recommend that you read the book. And of course, we gather from this book that Kennedy had no idea that the largest gold mine in the world was in Indonesia. The second largest copper mine was in Indonesia. Some of the largest oil fields were in Indonesia, as also deposits of natural gas were in Indonesia. And he had no clue that the CIA had no interest in supporting Sukarno, who was at that point the president of Indonesia. And I am connected in a very strange way, in a very tiny microscopic way, because I was the cardiologist assigned by the government of India to accompany His Excellency, Mr. Nelson Mandela, who wanted to go to Indonesia to pay his respects to Sukarno. Of course, by the time he went and I accompanied him, Suharto was in position. Suharto apparently had been placed by the CIA. The story is that there was almost a coup and Sukarno was pushed out and a general, that is Suharto, was put in his place. And the reason, of course, was that the Americans wanted to consolidate their position in Indonesia. That was very important. And the reason behind that, of course, were these great reserves of oil and minerals. Now, coming to the point, I mentioned this because yesterday I read in the Spectator. The Spectator is the oldest weekly magazine in the world. It came about in 1828, which makes it almost 200 years old. The current British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, was the editor for almost 6 years, from 1999 to I think 2005. And therein lies the importance of the Spectator. It is one of the world's premier magazine that focuses on culture and politics and current affairs. I don't think it has a grip on COVID-19. So therefore, this article which I read from Matt Ridley, who is a frequent contributor to the magazine, this article says quite blandly, in fact, quite brazenly, that fatality by the new COVID variant is as high as 65%. Now, he quotes Public Health England. He's trying to get what is, I would consider, a sort of respect by saying that Public Health England has stated that fatality or deaths by the new variant, by the new British variant, is as high as 65%. Now, you and I know that this is a complete lie, but by now we should not be astonished if the mainstream media or even if such respected magazines as the Spectator mention such lies. But apart from this, what is disturbing, at least for me, is that the Lancet yesterday has put up a piece. This is not an editorial, this is not a perspective, it is a report in World Affairs. It talks about the new variants, the new 3 variants, the South African one, the Brazilian one, and of course the British one. And it quotes NERVTAG. NERVTAG, as I mentioned earlier, is the committee which advises the English government on COVID-19, the new emerging respiratory virus threat advisory group. And this article says, this article in the Lancet says that NERVTAG has suggested, and this is considered a strong possibility, that mortality would increase with this new variant. It goes on to say also in the next sentence, but that of course this information is preliminary and possibly the deaths may be very, very limited. Now this is not strange to me any longer. There has been a program all these months, in fact for almost 1 year, in which there has been a constant endeavor, efforts made across the world by the mainstream media, and I am unhappy to say, even by the leading medical journals of the world. There has been efforts made to create some sort of massive fear or even terrify the general public. Now, the Lancet is one of the oldest medical journals in the world, and it is read by scientists. It is not read by lay people. So for the Lancet to approve of such sentences which are saying that there is a real possibility that deaths would be increased by this new variant in England is quite bizarre, to say the least. I don't agree with the Lancet, and I do not agree with the statement, and all evidence so far suggests that mortality is really not increased. Now let me go into the details. There is only one preprint, and possibly this preprint is a source, but this preprint came up, I think, day before yesterday, and this is yet to be published. A preprint means that it is being reviewed. It has yet not been reviewed fully by experts in the field. The preprint is by a modeler, by a mathematical modeler. It is not by a virologist or an epidemiologist or by a clinician or by a molecular biologist. This is a preprint by a mathematician, in fact by 3 mathematicians. One of them is a stats expert. Now what does this preprint tell us? It is informing us that they have checked almost 580,000 cases, that is 5.8 lakh cases, or about 500,000 cases in England from September to January. And of these cases, 50% were women. I will give you the age distribution. 45% of these cases, that is almost half of them, were below the age of 35 years. 35%, that is 1/3, were between 35 and 55 years. Between 55 years and 70 years, there were only 15%. Between 70 years and 85 years, there were only 3.8%. Above the age of 55 years, there were only 0.8%. So what we understand now is that they are talking about a population which is largely young. Now, they also concede, they state clearly in their introduction that mortality below the age of 55 years was not increased. Let me repeat, despite the fact that almost 80%, almost 45 plus 35 would be about 45, 35, 75, 80% of the population which was below the age of 55 years had no evidence of increased deaths by the new variant. Now they come to the group of people who were between 55 and 70 years. Now I would fall in that group. Here they find that there was an increase in mortality from 0.56 to 0.73, and that is just about 0.1%. So which is really not very much. It would be just about 0.12%. Now which is rather insignificant actually. And the increase in mortality from 55 years, no, sorry, from 70 to 85 years was 1%. This is an absolute increase in mortality. And this was from 5% to 6%. Above the age of 85 years, that 0.8% of the population had an increase in mortality from 17 to 22%. So what we are seeing is, although there is some small increase in mortality, this was seen only in the elderly people, in people above the age of 70 years. Now, there are two very, very strong and big limitations of this paper. The first is that the population which has been studied is only, excuse me, is only 7% of all people who have died in England during that period. So we cannot make any sweeping assertions. We cannot come to any strong conclusions when we assess only 7% of the population which has died. The second big important limitation is that they have not provided, I think because they are mere modelers, well, I should not say mere modelers, but because they are modelers, they have not told us what were the risk factors attached to the people who have died. There is no mention of how many people had diabetes, how many people had obesity, or how many people had heart disease, heart failure, or even respiratory diseases. So when we do not have this huge amount of data, this paper I would not approve for publication in any journal whatsoever. So let me conclude that the new variant, at least the British variant, is maybe slightly more infectious, but it does not kill. Similarly, there is no evidence so far that the South African variant is more lethal. We have information, we have preprints suggesting that the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, though slightly less effective against the South African variant, are though effective. We also know that the J&J vaccine, a single jab of the J&J vaccine, has been found to be effective against the South African variant to the tune of 85% reduction in severe infection. And I think that is a very, very important take-home message. So, thank you very much. If you have liked this video, please do subscribe to this channel, share this video, and kindly do pass some comments. Thank you very much.